This is a special report. We are Crime Ledger. Good evening. We are interrupting programming at this hour with a significant development in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of today's show host, Savannah Guthrie. At the heart of this investigation lies a single, connecting thread, a filament weaving through 3 names, 2 addresses, 1 musical group, and 1 fateful night. And it all leads to one woman, who has now been missing for 44 days. Until now, the reporting has examined this thread in fragments, one name, one theory at a time, each piece isolated by a headline, but no one has traced the entire length of this thread, from its beginning to the dark place where it ultimately leads. Tonight, we follow that thread to its end. From the very first days of this case, 3 specific names have persistently surfaced. They have been carried on the currents of media reports, echoed by expert analysts, and held under the intense scrutiny of millions following this story since the morning of February 1st, 2026. These 3 names have ignited more commentary, more intense examination, and more public debate than any others connected to this investigation, save for the sheriff leading it. If this case matters to you, subscribe to Crime Ledger and turn on notifications. Every update, every breakthrough, you will not miss it. They are 3 individuals whose links to one another, and to the night Nancy Guthrie vanished, create a disturbing pattern that has yet to be fully assembled until now. Their names, Tomaso Chioni, Annie Guthrie, and Dominic Evans. This is an examination of the theories that bind them, the evidence that supports or refutes them, and the conclusions of credentialed analysts. It is about what the verified public record can establish, and because we do not render verdicts here, we will deal only in facts, tracing each theory to the precise point where the evidence stops. The unvarnished truth is the only version of this story that matters, and that truth, in its raw complexity, is far more compelling than any sensationalist narrative could ever be. But before exploring those theories, it is critical to understand the timeline of events. The speculation is meaningless without the framework of fact. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, known to many as the mother of Today's Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. Born Nancy Long, she resided in the Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona. Her home sits within a quiet residential enclave, the kind of place where the tranquil evenings feel impervious to harm. By all accounts, she is a woman of immense warmth, deeply loved. She raised children who grew into successful, public-facing figures, yet she remained the quiet center of their world, always connected, close enough for routine family dinners, close enough to be a constant presence in the lives of her grandchildren, close enough, in fact, that January 31st, 2026 began as just another ordinary night. On that evening, Nancy summoned an Uber for a family dinner at the home of her daughter, Annie. Following the meal, Annie's husband, Tomaso Chioni, drove Nancy back to her Catalina Foothills residence. According to the timeline, confirmed by the Pima County Sheriff's Department, Chioni saw Nancy walk safely inside her house before he departed. She was inside. She was home. She was, for a moment, safe. But then, as confirmed by the Pima County Sheriff's Department, at 1:47 a.m., on February 1st, a masked male figure appeared at Nancy's front door. He stood between 5'9" and 5'10", equipped with an Ozark Trail adult hiker pack, a backpack sold exclusively at Walmart, and was wearing gloves. A holstered firearm was visible, as was the antenna of a walkie-talkie protruding from a jacket pocket. His movements were described as deliberate, unhurried, and purposeful. He appeared to know the location of the security cameras. Then, at 2:28 a.m., the application monitoring Nancy's pacemaker suddenly went offline. Traces of her blood were discovered on the front porch. Inside the house, her pink cane was left behind. Her phone, wallet, medication, and purse, all the essential items for her daily life, remained untouched. Only Nancy herself was gone. The alarm was raised on February 1st, after Nancy failed to log on for a virtual church service she was scheduled to attend. The FBI swiftly joined the investigation, and Task Force 7 was formally established. Several ransom notes, demanding payment in Bitcoin, were sent to media outlets, including TMZ. Their deadlines passed by February 9th. The case even reached the White House, which issued a public statement. President Trump placed a direct call to Savannah Guthrie, offering the full support of additional federal resources. The combined reward for information leading to her whereabouts now exceeds $1,200,000. In early March, Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC's Today Show that investigators were definitely closer. Yet the investigation remains active, and no arrests have been made. No charges have been filed. And after 44 days, Nancy Guthrie is still missing. Which brings us back to the three names. The first is Tomaso Chioni. To grasp the theories surrounding him, one must first understand the man himself. He is 50 years old. An old professional profile contains a biography, written in his own words, that reads as follows. I was born in San Giovanni Valdarno on June 18, 1975. Since 2006, I have been living in Tucson, Arizona. I write when it happens. I study lizards. I play the electric bass. I make homemade pasta. It's a self-description that is revealing in its own right for its precision, its quiet humor, and its peculiar specificity. This is the biography of a man who does not appear to perform for an online audience. Professionally, he is an AP biology and 6th grade science teacher at Basis Oro Valley, a man who taught at one of the most highly regarded public charter schools in the United States, where for over 15 years, he was described by students and peers alike as nothing short of exceptional. He is the husband of Annie Guthrie, NY's eldest daughter. For years, he was woven into the very fabric of this family. He was a fixture at birthdays, holidays, and all the quiet moments that mark the calendar of a close-knit family. In Tucson, he plays bass and sings in a local band. That band will become significant later. On the evening of January 31st, he drove his mother-in-law to her home after a family dinner at the house he shared with his wife. He watched as she walked safely inside. Then, he drove home. He was the last person confirmed to have seen Nancy Guthrie alive. In the time since she vanished, he has not uttered a single public word. No statements, no interviews, no posts on any social platform. He made no appearance before the cameras, save for the one-month memorial on March 1st, at the tribute held, outside NY's residence. There he stood, alongside Savannah and Annie, offering only silence to the reporters as the three of them left a handwritten card that read, in part, though we are surrounded by so much darkness and uncertainty, our love burns bright. We love you, Mommy. 44 days. And from him, not a single word to the press. He has made no appearance where he was not a family member, standing in solidarity with Savannah and Annie in their shared anguish. His silence, in itself, is not evidence of anything. To remain silent is his constitutional right. Any attorney in the country would advise a person in his circumstances to say nothing publicly while a federal investigation involving their family is active. And yet, it is his profound silence that has become the one detail the public cannot seem to reconcile. Because silence, in the shadow of a missing loved one, in the midst of a case with $1 million reward and the full force of the FBI, a case under the relentless glare of national news coverage, becomes a conspicuous void that people notice, and cannot stop noticing. And then, there is the car. The blue Honda CR-V, registered to Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni, was taken into police custody during the initial phase of the investigation. This is the vehicle Tommaso was driving when he took Nancy home on the night of January 31st. As of Wednesday, March 11th, more than 5 weeks after Sheriff Nanos had formally cleared all of NY's children and their spouses in a written statement, that car had still not been returned to the family. A spokesperson for the PCSD confirmed to Parade magazine on March 11th that the vehicle remained in the custody of law enforcement and that it was being reassembled at an auto shop following what was termed an exhaustive search, with no timeline given for its return, being put back together. Not examined, not processed, but put back together. It is the kind of language that strongly suggests the vehicle was first systematically taken apart, a procedure reserved for investigations that seek to extract forensic data from every circuit, every surface, every system a vehicle holds. Former SWAT Commander Bob Krieger, who once led the PCSD SWAT team, offered Parade this potential explanation. It likely comes down to something as basic as the original scene being released back to the family too quickly. Consequently, investigators are now compelled to ensure they have explored every single possibility. They must preserve the integrity of any potential evidence on or inside that car. The official PCSD statement regarding the vehicle, which was confirmed by Arizona CBS 5 correspondent Brianna Whitney on February 27th, was terse. All we can say right now is that the vehicle is still part of the investigation. Still part of the investigation. even after the family was cleared, even after the declaration that there were no suspects. Still, the theory surrounding Tommaso was given its most prominent platform by journalist Ashley Banfield. Around February 4th, the same day the PCSD released its no suspect statement, Banfield reported on her podcast, Drop Dead Serious, that a source, whom she specifically described as a highly credentialed law enforcement individual with direct knowledge of the case, had identified Tomaso Chioni as the prime suspect in NY's disappearance. They have towed Annie Guthrie's car, and there is some connection to Annie Guthrie's car and Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law. That would be Annie's husband, Thomas Oyon, age 50, from Tucson, Arizona, married to Annie P. Guthrie, Savannah's sister. And my law enforcement source tells me that Thomas Oyon is the prime suspect in this case. Again, law enforcement source tells me that Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law, married to Annie Guthrie, Savannah's sister, is maybe a prime suspect in this. Read you what the sheriff has said. On Sunday, he spoke to the Daily Mail and said, quote, "Nobody has been cleared as suspects. The Guthrie family has not been identified as suspects, which is very different from has been cleared. Okay, for my part, I haven't been named a suspect, and from my home in Connecticut, I face absolutely no legal jeopardy in this case. That, however, is a far cry from the situation facing those just a couple of doors down from the mother, or in the case of Savannah's sister and brother-in-law, a mere 2 miles away. And while I am not suggesting those two had any involvement in what happened to Nancy Guthrie, the sheriff has maintained one thing all along. No one has been ruled out. No one has been ruled out. No one has been ruled out. And even as he repeated that refrain, his department towed the sister-in-law's car and formally impounded it as evidence. He, along with the FBI, dispatched law enforcement agents to the home of the sister and brother-in-law, not once, but repeatedly, with visits that included the dead of night, where they operated with lights extinguished, taking photographs at 2:10:30 a.m. They returned for at least one other overnight operation. Why this intense focus? This level of scrutiny was never applied to Nancy Guthrie's actual neighbors, and the residence of Annie Guthrie and her husband, Tomas, is not considered the crime scene. So why would they pour such exhaustive investigative work into their home if they weren't at least considering one or both of them as being connected to Nancy's disappearance? Nanos appeared on television, branding the reporting as irresponsible. He insisted that no suspect or person of interest had been formally identified and implored the media to act with compassion and professionalism. Later, on February 12th, during an interview on Dan Abrams' Sirius XM program, Banfield escalated her position. When her reporting was questioned, she retorted, "When they take shots at you, you're standing on the target." She offered no retraction of her original report. She stood firm. Legal analysts on the Megyn Kelly show later confirmed that any defamation suit Cioni might file against Banfield would be dead on arrival. As her reporting is protected, this means two contradictory truths exist simultaneously. The reporting is shielded by law, and yet the official position of the investigating agency is that the family has been cleared. These two facts are locked in a permanent tension, a conflict this examination will not pretend doesn't exist. The most detailed external analysis of the car's seizure came from former FBI agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffa. She offered the following insight. The searches have been consent searches. In essence, law enforcement lacked probable cause to suspect their involvement. They secured permission. If they had probable cause, she explained, I can tell you as an FBI agent, I'm not going to get consent. Why would I rely on consent when I know that in a courtroom, it will be argued the person was coerced? With this analysis, Coffin-Daffa was making a case for the family's innocence. Consent searches, in her view, signify cooperation, not suspicion. The vehicle is being held because it was one of the final places Nancy was physically located before she vanished, not because authorities believe it harbors evidence of a crime committed by its owners. The theory implicating Tommaso rests on a foundation of 4 key points. He was the last known person to have seen Nancy alive. His vehicle has been held by police for more than 40 days. He has offered no public statement, and he was identified by Ashley Banfield's named law enforcement source. The unvarnished facts are these. He was officially cleared on February 16th in a formal written declaration. The searches were by consent, not probable cause warrants, according to Coffin-Daffa. Savannah affirmed that she was not suspicious of him. There has been no charge and no official designation of any kind. The second name to emerge is Annie Guthrie. She is Nancy's oldest daughter, a poet, the author of a published book called The Good Dark, and a jeweler whose creations are sold in galleries across the Southwest. In a 2013 interview, Annie referred to Tommaso as her greatest teacher, the one who transformed her into a better writer. That small detail is not evidence, but it does offer a portrait of a marriage. It speaks of two people whose lives were deeply intertwined, both creatively and personally, who had built their world together in the same city where Annie grew up, right beside her mother. On February 7th, 2026, just 6 days after Nancy disappeared, the FBI executed a search on Annie and Tommaso's Arizona property. Federal agents were seen using a forensic data extraction device, the type used to pull information from phones and computers. They were also witnessed carrying boxes of items from the residence. The search itself was authorized by a federal judge who deemed there was a sufficient basis to proceed. Its findings have never been released to the public. What is confirmed is that the search occurred on February 7th and that the investigators were exhaustive in their efforts. Following that search, photographs of Annie and Tommaso that were once publicly visible on her social media were taken down, a fact confirmed by Men's Journal on approximately February 8th. This is a documented event. It is not, however, evidence of anything more than what any private individual might do when they realize millions of people are scrutinizing every visible aspect of their lives. It is a move that makes perfect practical sense within the context of the media frenzy this case ignited. But it is also part of the documented public record, and it became one of the key details that fueled the rampant online theories that swirled around Annie in the weeks after the search. On March 10th, Annie and her brother Cameron made a fleeting appearance at Nancy's house, nestled in the Catalina Foothills. Annie was captured in a photograph, her face concealed by a hoodie and dark sunglasses. Her sister, Savannah, was conspicuously absent. The image proliferated across social media almost instantaneously, fueling a relentless wave of public commentary. Individuals who had invested weeks scrutinizing every detail fixated on the photograph, their gaze reflecting the intensity of an audience seeking confirmation for a belief they already held. Let us consider the unvarnished context. This is a daughter, visiting the home of her missing mother 6 weeks into one of modern America's most high-profile disappearance cases. She has been relentlessly followed, photographed, and subjected to a degree of public speculation that her own sister has described as nothing short of cruel. She concealed her face because on every occasion she fails to do so, she becomes fodder for a video precisely like this one. Her intention was not to become invisible. She was photographed, yes, but her true aim was to navigate her private grief without being transformed into public content. Savannah Guthrie's position on the matter is confirmed and well documented. As Megyn Kelly reported on March 12th, I have confirmed that Savannah is livid about that report and unequivocally does not suspect her sister or her brother-in-law. Kelly further elaborated. Of course she loves her sister. I'm sure she loves her brother-in-law, and I am certain she genuinely doesn't believe they had any involvement. Savannah withdrew from her NBC obligations and announced a $1 million reward. She has appeared publicly in tears and stood vigil at a memorial. None of these are the actions of a woman who harbors suspicion toward her own sister. The theory surrounding Annie ultimately hits the same wall as the one concerning Tommaso, who was officially cleared on February 16th. Consent searches were conducted, and her own sister confirmed her non-involvement. There has been no charge, no official designation as a person of interest. The evidence that fuels this theory is a matter of record, and this account has presented it with integrity, and the honest assessment of it terminates in the exact same place. Now, a third name surfaces, and it is here that the connective tissue between all three individuals becomes visible. Because Dominic Evans is not the end of a theory, he is the point where the network reveals itself. Dominic Aaron Lee Evans is a 48-year-old fifth-grade teacher in Tucson, a father to 3 sons. He is a youth sports coach, a man whose life, by every available account, is structured around classrooms, weekend games, and the ordinary architecture of family life in a mid-sized American city. He holds no celebrity status. He possesses no connection to any famous family. He has no relationship to the Guthrie name, save for one critical exception. He is the drummer in a band called Early Black. That is the thread. Early Black is a Tucson-based rock band that was formed in April of 2007. Evans is one of its founding members. The band materialized when Evans and Tomaso Chioni, the very man who drove Nancy Guthrie home on the final night, she was seen alive, located a guitarist named Walter I. Gonalves Jr. through an advertisement on Craigslist. According to the band's verified Reverb Nation biography, Chioni had responded to a posting in the Tucson Weekly. 3 men, a single classified ad, and a band was formed in the Arizona desert, a band that would, nearly 2 decades later, become the documented link connecting a drummer who met a missing woman once to the man who drove her home on the night she vanished. The band recorded their first album at Loveland Studios in Tucson, releasing it in the years that long preceded this investigation. The album garnered positive reviews from the Tucson Weekly. The band's own biography characterizes their early material as being grittier than what would follow. Over the years, the band performed at local venues and, on occasion, in Phoenix and Flagstaff. The debut album is titled Life, Love, Love, Murder. Life, love, love, murder. It is a stylized mathematical equation, one that positions love and murder on opposing ends of the same human relationship. An album titled and released years before Nancy Guthrie ever disappeared, named with the peculiar creative logic of a rock band crafting an artistic statement on human complexity. That is precisely what it is, a creative title from a band's formative years. It is also the detail that, once unearthed by the online communities fixated on this case, could not be unseen. It was posted. It metastasized. It took its place alongside the vehicle detail, the FBI search of the home, the silence, and the Banfield source. And it became the foundational piece that online theorists seized upon when they needed something to bind all the disparate elements together. An album titled Life, Love, Love, Murder, created by the band of the man who drove Nancy Guthrie home on January 31st. The profound resonance of that detail within this specific case is the very reason this examination exists. When the Federal Bureau of Investigation released the surveillance footage of the suspect, comparisons between the masked individual and photographs of Evans spread like wildfire across X, Reddit, and TikTok and YouTube within a matter of days. People descended upon his neighborhood. They appeared on his street. They photographed his house. He and his wife, Andrea, hid inside their bedroom with the lights extinguished, telling their teenage son to stay away from home for his own safety. Andrea confided in the New York Times that she felt scared and numb. Evans spoke directly to the New York Times in an interview that was published on February 28, 2026. He said, "I feel like someone's taken my name." Whether monetized speculation qualifies as relevant entertainment is debatable. What is not, however, is the collateral damage inflicted upon innocent people. In a 40-minute conversation approximately 1 week into the investigation, he conveyed to a joint team of FBI and PCSD investigators that he was at home with his family on the night of January 31st. Since that initial discussion, there has been no further contact from law enforcement. An examination of his Pima County court records reveals a significant history of felony charges: theft, robbery, and burglary. Embezzlement charges were also confirmed in public records and reported on by the New York Times and Parade magazine. These are established facts from his past. They are not established facts within this case. No official agency has ever issued a statement linking him to this investigation. Sheriff Nanos did, however, comment publicly on the digital campaign being waged against Evans. "He is going through hell," the sheriff stated, "and it is horrible. And I don't know what to tell him, except that he should probably be speaking with some attorneys and sue some of these people for libel." Those were the words of the sheriff of Pima County. The man leading this very investigation is describing the online targeting of Evans as a case of potentially actionable defamation. That is not the kind of language used by an investigative body that considers Dominic Evans a person of serious interest. Let us now pull back and examine all 3 individuals together, because the core of this narrative is not the individual theories, but the threads that bind them. Tomaso Chioni drove Nancy home. He is the husband of her daughter, Annie. He is the bassist for the band Early Black. His vehicle is currently being meticulously reassembled by forensics teams. He has offered no public comment. He was officially cleared on February 16th. Annie Guthrie hosted the final dinner party. Authorities searched her home on February 7th. She has stood beside her sister at every public memorial. Her own sister has publicly affirmed that she is not under suspicion. She was officially cleared on February 16th. Dominic Evans is the drummer in Tomaso Chion's band. He met Nancy a single time, back in 2011. He was questioned for 40 minutes and has not been contacted again. He has issued a categorical denial of any and all involvement. While he has not been officially cleared a status reserved for family, no official body has ever designated him a suspect or person of interest. The band's album is titled A Life Love. Love, Murder. The band itself was formed through a classified ad placed in Tucson. The bassist's mother-in-law disappeared 44 days ago, and the drummer sat inside a darkened house with his wife, telling his son not to come home. That is the network. That is the documented, verifiable thread. This is the architecture of the connection that the internet has refused to dismantle, relentlessly linking these three names since the first week of February 2026. On February 16, 2026, Sheriff Nanos released a formal, written statement to the press. His precise words were, "To be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious, and are victims in this case. To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. That declaration explicitly encompasses both Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni. Both of them, by virtue of their category as family, were cleared on the record. That statement has never been revised or walked back. Dominic Evans has never been officially named a suspect or a person of interest. He was questioned on one occasion, with no further follow-up. The sheriff went so far as to express public sympathy for Evans's ordeal and suggested he might have legal recourse. The searches of Annie and Tommaso's home and car were conducted based on their consent, a fact that speaks volumes about the investigative posture. Had investigators possessed probable cause to obtain a warrant, they would have used it. They did not. The car is being held because Nancy was last seen inside it, not because its owners are under any suspicion. There have been no charges. There have been no arrests, and no suspects have been named. The investigation is active, with the FBI and Task Force 7 at the helm. The reward now exceeds $1,200,000. Sheriff Nanos revealed to NBC News that investigators are now definitely closer. 3 names, 2 clearances, 1 band, 1 album, and 1 woman, missing for 44 days. These theories are all documented, sourced, and presented within their honest limitations. The threat is real, the network is confirmed, and every element of it, every single documented connection between these 3 people and the events of January 31st, 2026, leads to the same destination that everything in this case must lead to: finding Nancy Guthrie. If you possess any information about her disappearance, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line is 520-351-490. The 88 crime line is available around the clock. The combined reward for information is over $1,200,000. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, from Tucson, Arizona, last seen on February 1st, 2026. The thread is real. The theories have been recounted with transparency, with every limitation acknowledged and every official clearance stated for the record. And somewhere, far beyond all of this, a man who makes homemade pasta and studies lizards drove his mother-in-law to her home one January evening, waited as the garage door closed, and then drove away. And whatever transpired next is the only story that matters now. Find her.